Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Now, when it comes to consent to sex, no means no. That is straightforward. But the absence of a no, can that ever be taken as a yes? Sometimes maybe, but the answer to that basically in law is no. But is it clear-cut when consent is given and when it's not? The question has been tested tonight in a fascinating BBC Three documentary. It took a dramatised scene of oral sex between two teenagers, an uncomfortable scene in which the girl is barely awake. She ultimately accuses the boy of rape, and we see clips from the dramatised trial. Now, what's clever is that the documentary stops the action at key points to ask a panel of real teenagers and the audience at home their view on the incident. So have a look at this 6-minute version of the film, which starts with the party, after which the sex occurs. It also includes some of the comments of the real teenagers watching it. Now, 3 key questions for you. Had the girl given consent? Did the boy think she'd given consent? And was the incident one of rape?
Sorry. Hey, what happened to the music?
Everyone left. Like you fall asleep in the kitchen or something.
I must have.
Waster.
Jim, I'm freezing. Can you budge up? Jim. Just like old times, yeah.
So there was absolutely no consent, so it definitely really is just single word rape.
It was a horrible case of miscommunication. If she definitely did not want it, she would have pushed him away.
It could have just been because she couldn't be bothered to say no, which we've all been in like a situation with a boy trying to force himself on us, and you just, in the end, you just kind of like, oh, okay, fine, whatever.
You know, unwanted sexual contact is unwanted sexual contact.
Yeah. She didn't actually say anything. Like, she didn't show that she was up for it, but at the same time, she didn't do anything to stop it.
I'm not saying it was right what happened, but I do not think it's sexual assault. The girl was awake and she didn't exactly consent, but she didn't say no. And it would, I don't think he would even end up in court.
Emergency, which service? Hello?
I want to speak to the police. This guy I know, he did something to me.
The two of you had a previous relationship, is that correct?
Yeah, we went out for about 3 months or something. Honestly, that's why when I got the text, I thought she was still interested.
You were very happy when Mr. Morris came out of that kitchen. You were very happy to give him oral sex.
He made me.
Then why didn't you put a stop to it? All you needed to say was no. It all would have been very simple. You could have called out to your friend in the upstairs room.
I don't know. I just couldn't. I just froze.
Now I've realised that she really didn't want that to happen. I kind of look back to the actual situation and think, if you really didn't want it to happen that bad,
then you should have said no. She's taken it this far when she could have stopped it right there.
His life is going to be ruined for a misunderstanding. He didn't have the intent. But he didn't have the intent to rape her.
So
You're going to give it either way.
where is rape, yeah? Rape is usually you're intending to actually sexually assault them, yeah?
But he didn't intend
He didn't intend, so rape is a big word for it, but it is still rape.
You can flirt, and you can flirt, and you can flirt, and it's not an invitation.
Yeah.
If it was my friend, I wouldn't call the police, but he would be shunned. He'd be gone. I wouldn't like him as a person, but I wouldn't call the police.
If we could say that Tom could be charged with a sex offence rather than rape, we would prefer that, but because it comes under rape, although it is such a strong word, it is classed as that.
So is it fair that he would get the same sentence as someone who randomly approached a woman, attacked her and, like, violently raped her?
With the current justice system, the whole thing would fall apart if you make excuses. You can't say, oh, well, it's not that bad because the next thing's not that bad. You have to draw a line. If it comes under rape, it comes under rape.
We had slept in the same bed loads before, so I just climbed up on the sofa bed.
Then what happened?
I don't know, we kissed.
Did she kiss you back?
I don't know, I can't remember.
Did she say anything?
She didn't say anything like stop or anything.
But she didn't do anything to indicate that she wanted you to continue?
She would definitely have said if she wasn't into it.
Did she respond in any way at all?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
I know people that have been in situations where they haven't given consent to their boyfriend even for sex for that particular time, but their boyfriend's gone ahead with it anyway. And body language, as we've seen in that video, is not enough consent, I don't think.
You can't brush things off. It's not a case of he's quite nice, so he can go. He's done this and he has to pay for it.
Tom is a rapist. He committed rape, he is a rapist. But you say the word rapist to someone and they think of a vile monster of a person. And Tom isn't a monster. He's a boy who did a bad thing, but he's a boy.
What the actual hell are you people talking about? Rape is torture. You're actually torturing someone. I don't understand how anyone can verbalise that this isn't that bad.
I've already questioned myself, have I actually done something and not known that I've done it? Because that boy, Tom, he knew what he was doing was wrong, but he didn't know it was rape. Because hundreds of different possibilities, you know, what's the chances that 24 people haven't done one of them?
Well, that was a 6-minute version of a 1-hour film. I gave you the 3 key questions. You may have just about felt you had enough to go on. Did Gemma give her consent? Did Tom believe he had consent? And was it rape? Well, these are the results of the teenage panel who were watching and the voters at home. Consent? No consent was given, not given, said the teenagers, with the viewer vote being even stronger on the issue. Did Tom believe he had consent? Yes, he did, according to the vote, but by a less substantial majority. And was it rape? Yes, that was overwhelming in both samples. Alison Saunders, let's start on that point. I mean, in many circles, it's actually quite unacceptable to entertain the possibility that there are degrees of rape. Do you accept that actually quite a lot of people who are not schooled in the law or the history of debate about the subject, that actually, very naturally, they do see that you can have an 80-20 or a 50-50 or a...
I think it's really difficult because where do you draw the line? The impact on the victims is very often the same, whether it's a stranger rape, whether it's somebody you know. Some people may say it's worse if it's somebody you know. And I think that's really difficult. That's why we have one offence of rape. And in order to change it, there would have to be a real adult debate about it.
But, I mean, the idea of having, there's murder 1 and murder 2 in the States and murder and manslaughter here. But
murder and manslaughter are very different.
I mean, they're different things.
Intent.
Yeah, and you don't see any reason to have a difference between a rape where someone says no and a rape where someone, if you like, is not saying no, but is not saying yes.
She's saying no, and that's one of the myths, of course, is that people don't fight they freeze, and if you don't fight that somehow, you're to blame. So she wasn't saying yes, so she wasn't consenting in the video. So, you know, that is rape. It's about sexual intercourse or sort of some form of sexual activity with consent.
Right, because in the film, one of the things the defending barrister says to her is, if you had just said no, this would be very clear cut. And I'm sure a lot of guys would be thinking, I would like to know if this is not acceptable to you, then just, you know, can't I expect you to tell me, and then I will.
But there are ways in which people react, and people react very differently, and that's, of course, one of the myths, is that people will put up a fight, people will always say no. Some people just freeze, and that's their natural reaction, and they just can't help it, that's what they do, and they think it will be over and done with. I think, as the girl said when she was giving evidence in the film, she would just stay there hoping it was going to be over and done with if she did nothing. But that is not giving consent, and, of course, sexual activity, you have to have consent.
Right. Tell me how you would have voted in the three things. Did she give consent?
No.
No, because she was basically half asleep. I mean, mostly asleep. Did he believe she'd given consent? Because that's the hardest question of the three.
But that's not the test. Did he believe? It's about objectively, would consent be given, and was it given freely and with the capacity to give consent? So if you look at it objectively, how did he think consent was given? She was asleep. She was half asleep when he started kissing her. She didn't react. She didn't respond. She lay there. So how did he believe that was consent?
Isn't the question then that would a reasonable person have believed they had consent?
Yes,
so
absolutely.
you say he didn't have reason.
No.
A reasonable person wouldn't have believed.
No.
So then it definitely was rape.
Yes.
And tell me, just because it sort of finishes the story, would you imagine a sentence of 7 years for an offence of that kind?
There's lots of things we don't know, his previous convictions, all those sorts of things, so it may not have been quite 7 years. So, but 7 years is not unthinkable, but it possibly would have been a bit less.
In the film, the youngsters see a lot of people, a few witnesses come in, and a man accused of rape, who was, the case was thrown out by a judge. Are you in any way ever sympathetic to the idea that defendants should have anonymity? Because clearly in that particular category of offence it can be a great deal more damaging to the defendant than it would be in some other offences.
And I can understand why people would not wish to be named. It's very difficult. We don't name people up until the point of charge. We never disclose their identity for obvious reasons. Once they're charged, it's a matter of public record. But I can see how it would be quite traumatic for somebody, especially if they're not convicted at the end of the day.
Yeah. I think you've once said, a myth persists that establishing whether someone is a willing sexual partner is complicated. I mean, the film, in a way, you don't think it makes it complicated at all. You just think it's really clear-cut?
Well, I think the law's really clear-cut. I think there are misunderstandings around it, and the film has shown that. That's why we did our social media campaign around #ConsentIs, because to try and explain and to get the debate. So it's really good to see the film, again, provoking that. What was reassuring was how close the public vote was around, yes, it was rape, and around the sort of consent issue.
Alison Saunders, thanks very much.
Thank you.
I've been getting away with it all my